Welcome to Gospel Tangents, the best source for Mormon history, science, and theology. I'm Rick Bennett. In 2014, Elder Dallin Oaks gave an amazing talk on women and priesthood. Dr. Jonathan Stapley, who wrote the book By the Power of Godliness, said that this talk was groundbreaking. But in our next conversation with Dr. Margaret Toscano, we're going to find out if she agrees with Jonathan. Margaret's written a chapter in the Gospel Topics series, edited by Newell Bringhurst and Matt Harris. This is a fantastic book, by the way. You should get it. And we'll talk about whether she agrees with Jonathan on Elder Oaks' statement in 2014. So check out our conversation. So let me ask you a question, and I hate to keep going back to Jonathan, but I'm really curious about this. Elder Oaks gave a talk a few years ago that Jonathan viewed as groundbreaking when Elder Oaks basically said, you know, when a woman teaches Sunday school, she does it by power of priesthood. When she serves a mission, she does it by power of priesthood. Do you agree with that interpretation, or do you see that as an evolution as women being recognized with this priesthood power that you've been kind of advocating for the last several decades?
I think it's a very important development. I don't know what I say it's groundbreaking. I don't know if I'd call it groundbreaking, but I see it as a very important development. And by the way, that speech is quoted in the church's Gospel Topics essay. I think they quote it 3 times. This was a talk that Dallin Oaks gave in 2014. And it is extremely important because if you look at a lot of the discourse in the 20th century before that, the talk was that women were always recipients of the blessings of the priesthood. So Dallin Oaks says that women can act with authority and power, that they have authority and power, priesthood authority and priesthood power, when they're acting in their church callings. And let me see if I can find, here's in my essay, it's there. So and I do think it's really important. And by the way, in the same, right before that, actually, you also had the Relief Society presidency of the church giving an interview around the same time as Ordained Women, where they also said that women have authority, they have priesthood authority. But here's the interesting thing, and here's where I would say it's not groundbreaking. So now, and I see it as a really important step forward, and I'm glad it happened, that women are seen as having authority and power of priesthood. But I see 2 problems. First of all, the idea that Dallin Oaks emphasizes that, and I'll quote my own essay here, he emphasizes that the authority women have is only delegated authority deriving from the priesthood authority of male leaders, and that such delegated priesthood authority has a limited scope only relating to women's church callings while they serve in them. Now, in a way, you could say that same thing holds true for men. But the idea that it's not in you. And I think the endowment, and Joseph Smith, he was interested in that priesthood power being internal. Now, again, you have to have delegated authority in order to serve in an office. You can't call yourself. And I've never argued that you should, or that you should ordain yourself or call yourself or anything else, because there has to be a structure of the church. But I think it's important that he says it's only delegated authority. So it comes from male leaders, whereas I think the power of priesthood comes from God himself, that the ordinance symbolizes that. So That's one thing where I don't see it as groundbreaking. But again, I think it's really important. The other thing is that that the church, that they still want to make this really strong distinction between only men have keys, only men have offices, only men have these outward signs. Women can have authority and power, but they cannot have keys. They cannot have anything else. And I think it's really interesting. The term keys is one of the things that the church essay discusses. So Joseph Smith said to the women in Nauvoo, he said, I turn the key to you. I turn the key to you. And I don't have the full quote with me right now. I could dig it up, but I want to take the time. And he said, to you, I turn the key to you, and better times are ahead for you women, that you're now going to enjoy blessings you haven't before because I turned the key to you. Interestingly, in 1908, when B.H. Roberts was editing the history of the church, he changed that phrase, I turned the key to you. He changed it to, I turned the key on your behalf. And, it's just one little preposition, right? Who cares? But it's really important because I think when Joseph Smith said, and I think I mentioned this before in our other interview, Rick, and I actually could dig up the picture here. There was a 1936 Relief Society picture where you have Joseph Smith giving the key. He's giving the key. It's right over there. I could dig this up. He's giving the key to women. Why did B.H. Roberts change that? And actually, they had been arguing about this before. We think George A. Smith in the 1850s may have started that because it says, one is, again, delegated. Okay, I turn the key in your behalf. That's kind of like Dallin Oaks' statement. I turned it in your behalf, but I'm the one that has it because the keys are only in males. Whereas Joseph Smith saying, I give you the key. You women can open the doors for yourself now. And I think that's very significant. And it's interesting that B.H. Roberts also changed another phrase, whereas Joseph Smith said that the women were called in the order of the holy priesthood. They're called in the order. B.H. Roberts changed that to that women were called by the order of the holy priesthood. So again, any authority or power they have is all delegated by men. They are not in the order. They are just simply, it's delegated to them. And so I think that those, to me, show a different point of view about this. And in the essay, they say, well, Joseph Smith used the term keys really lightly. He used it for this and that. And it's true, he sometimes did. But again, I have a really interesting statement where he says that the fullness of the priesthood restored by Elijah gives you the fullness of the keys of the Melchizedek priesthood. And again, I don't think that means you can just go do whatever you want in the church, but the idea that you have those keys in you, that they are the notion that, and I feel like the notion that the power of godliness is not just delegated to you to use while you function in a church calling, but the power of godliness dwells in you. That for me is such, because I think that when you are endowed with the fullness of the Melchizedek priesthood and the Aaronic priesthood in the temple, at least this is how I think it used to be, that it meant that you were now part of the holy order of God. So you may not be part of the elders' quorum. You may not be part of the church quorums, but you're part because you have the power of godliness residing within you. You are now called to participate, to be part of the holy order of God. And that's really the essence of priesthood. I mean, I think it's really interesting that all of the debate now about nicknames for the church or whatever, you could say that the Melchizedek priesthood is actually a nickname. The real name of the priesthood is the holy priesthood after the order of the Son of God. And that's what Joseph Smith would have called the messianic priesthood. And he would say all priesthood is messianic, because that's really the fullness is messianic. We want to be raised to the stature and image of Jesus Christ himself. But we have these portions, and the purpose of those portions of the priesthood are to help us on that journey, that temple journey where you're walking and you're being increased in knowledge and power and wisdom and love and light and truth and so forth. So that's how I view it.
Well, that's interesting. Since you mentioned the keys, it just brought up another conversation I had with Nancy Ross. So Nancy teaches at Dixie State University, which apparently is getting a name change. We understand. But she had said when she was LDS, she could never be alone in the building, and that there always had to be a male priesthood holder there, which is pretty common throughout the church. But since she's joined the community of Christ, she said, they actually gave me a key to the building. And so this whole idea about keys, that, you know, do I delegate it to you as the LDS do, or do I actually give you a key as the community of Christ does? I think that's an interesting kind of metaphor on the difference between having the authority and being delegated authority.
No, exactly. And that's the point I'm trying to make, Rick. And I think Joseph Smith was interested in giving, I think he wanted to have every man and woman to be able to speak in the name of the Lord. This is kind of, I mean, again, I've studied everything he's ever written. And I feel like that his idea was that he believed like Moses, he wanted to make all God's people prophets, kings and priests, queens and priestesses, that we all needed to have, the power and the keys residing in us. There still needs to be order in an organization, right? That's another question. But I think he saw the purpose of priesthood in this larger sense. But I think that analogy, do you have the key so that you can use it when you need it? Or do you always have to ask permission from somebody else? I mean, and actually that comes up even with men in the whole question of, does the father have the right, could he baptize his child without getting permission from a church leader? And you could argue, well, maybe the church won't acknowledge the baptism unless they've given the authority, but could there be any validity in the baptism? Or, which wouldn't make you a member of the church, but would the baptism have validity?
Now you're getting into Denver snuffer territory.
And I don't go along with Denver snuffer, but on the one hand, I kind of see his point in the sense of it is this larger issue of, is the church a mechanism for individual empowerment, or is the church the thing that we all have to just serve? Are we subordinate to the church, or is the church here to serve us? I mean, and maybe it's a complex intertwining. It usually is. But, I think it's an interesting question.
Yeah. I hope you enjoyed our conversation with Dr. Margaret Toscano. In our next conversation, Margaret will describe how she thinks Joseph Smith saw the endowment in relation to priesthood power.
I think he saw the endowment. And if you think about the portions that first you're given the Aaronic and then the Melchizedek, that, you get those in the church. So what's the difference between the Aaronic and Melchizedek and the temple and the church? I think Joseph Smith saw it as a fullness of that you're getting the fullness of that. And so, in fact, I think that when you look at his speeches, he says that women don't have to go through all of the stages that men do. They can go right to the top and get the fullness of the priesthood without going through all of the church offices.
If you'd like to hear the entire interview uncut, please subscribe for just $5 a month at patreon.com/gospeltangents, and you can hear the entire interview before everybody else. If you'd like to watch the entire video for just $8 a month, you can either subscribe on YouTube, Patreon, or my website, gospeltangents.com. Just click the yellow subscribe button, and I'll add you to our Gospel Tangents Insiders group so that you can see entire videos. For those interested in a PDF transcript, you can subscribe at either Patreon or on my website. For just $10 a month, I'll send you a PDF as soon as it's complete. If you'd like a copy of the paperback as well as a PDF, just sign up for $20 a month at either Patreon or my website, gospeltangents.com. Of course, you can buy individual transcripts at amazon.com and just do a search for Gospel Tangents interview, and you can see all the things that we have there. Don't forget to support Gospel Tangents with an awesome t-shirt like one of these. You can subscribe at Apple Podcasts at tinyurl.com/gospeltangents. Get our latest updates at facebook.com/gospeltangents. Also, you can get our Twitter updates at Gospel Tangents. Click here to subscribe, here for a transcript, and over here we've got more of our great videos. Thanks again.